Welcome back, everyone, for the 10th episode of the Quiet Palace podcast, where great legends prevail and evil wanes to dust. Hopefully. I'm your host, Vet, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit unscripted. Typically, I would write something up and have something to talk about for an episode of the podcast, but in particular, for today, I did have plans for a friend of mine to come over and have us discuss something that we both knew a little bit about, but in this particular case, due to one of the biggest enemies in D&D history, scheduling, we unfortunately did not have the time to accomplish this yet. So, instead, as a bit of a backup, I'm going to talk about a character that I made a couple of years ago that I really enjoyed playing, and I have a couple stories about that I love to tell people, just because of the sheer ridiculousness of some of them. So I'm going to talk about Origorri Brightsmith, or as most people know him, Ori. He was a crafter of sorts. He kind of knew a lot about crafting, blacksmithing in general, that allowed him to be pretty useful in most areas of that expertise, masonry especially. He was good at stone carving. At some point, a great calamity befell his particular municipality, and unfortunately he had to pick everything back up. He ended up leaving the Underdark and going onwards for like an adventure to maybe find a way to preserve his people in some way, or at the very least start over with his particular beliefs and culture. So that was kind of his plan, and he wanted to journey across the world just to maybe find a suitable place to do that had nothing to do with the Underdark, considering how dangerous that place is, and how often similar characters or similar cultures and such that live down there have to deal with in that case, like the Drow. I mean, hey, do I really need to say more about them? Do I really need to say more about mind flayers or anything like that? The many dangers that await you going down this horrible dark hole that I just don't even think about half the time, and realize that Underdark campaigns must be a lot of fun for the sheer amount of danger that could lurk around every corner. I mean, that could go for a lot of different themes, of course, but especially for the Underdark, considering the darkness, considering everything. But our adventures were on the surface, nonetheless, and I've had a couple of, botched attempts at trying to do good things that ended up going horribly. And one of my favorite things that ended up going the best out of all of them was probably the time that Origorri manufactured a bomb. And when I say bomb, I mean we were being followed in the desert by some particular faction we are not quite aware of at this time. And we were headed to a city known as Scar. This was our DM's campaign, I think, of his own making, so I don't know how much it really had to do with the Forgotten Realms, but in this particular case, we were trying to get past this long, twisted travel route that was just going to take forever and be really hard on everybody, considering, it's this big desert. But at some point, we found this, robotic creature in the sky. It got close enough, and it was following us, and I managed to shoot it down. I was like an Eldritch Knight fighter, with decent crossbow capabilities. I think I had sharpshooter as well. And I managed to down the creature, and we found the core that was powering the beast. And in this particular case, it seemed to have a decent amount of magic in it, so we tried to mess with it, of course. I had proficiency in Tinkerer's tools, being a gnome, so yeah. Everyone at the carriage was not happy about it, so we ended up taking that guy probably about 250 feet away. I don't know about that far, maybe about 150 feet, some good distance away in case that thing blows up. The cleric came with me out of sheer pity, and in this particular case, he's the reason I'm still alive, because he blessed me. I ended up dropping the bomb, trying to gently place it down, and that roll went horrible. I rolled a 1, so you can imagine how that went. Yeah, it dropped, but the cleric managed to catch it with just like a split-second reaction. He was able to get the bomb, gently place it down, and through a procedure that took a lot of d20 rolls, considering we had to do different things to the bomb to activate certain phases, I was like, well, I'm in this thing. it seems to have a lot of magical power. I don't really know what to do with that. It's not like I can do anything with it. It's not like anyone in the party can just, whip out a fireball from this thing. So, what did I do? Decided to turn it into a weapon of our own creation. A bomb. We more or less made it so that it would become unstable and blow up at some point if I triggered it. And in this case, I had a 30-second timer. So, we had a decent amount of time on the bloody thing. But it was a process to make it that way. It managed to last the entirety of the campaign that we played in. It was a short campaign, maybe about, 10 to 20 sessions, probably closer to like 12 or 13. And that bomb managed to make it through all of that. And at the very end, we ended up using it on the final boss, actually. And it did a good amount of damage, if I'm not mistaken, but minutes or seconds before I was about to use it for what Ori could have probably seen as his last moments in life. He was going to run up with the bomb and try to place it in there and kind of sacrifice his own life, fighting against this giant undead beast. And in the end, it was kind of anticlimactic, but it blew up and we ended up destroying the creature. And we got as good an ending out of that campaign as we could. A town attacked by a god known as Valsharoon, who is piloting armies of cultists and undead and various other entities to come through and just ravage the civilization before them, pretty much the entire realm, and try to conquer it. And we were a last stand for a town known as Rivera that we were in at that point, and we ended up teleporting the whole town to somewhere entirely different, and that's where a different adventure begins, but I won't get into that today. We were just talking about Origorri and, of course, his lovely bomb. And I think that was probably the riskiest thing I've ever done as a D&D character that ended up going well for once. It didn't just literally blow up in my face. I'm very happy about it. As similar adventures in the past have gotten me absolutely screwed over. But I digress. Ori's got a lot of different stories. We've tried to steal a carriage in a town to try to get away from that town, to go to a different city that we had to go to. This was earlier in the adventure, the same adventure with Ori, before the desert. So when we were trying to steal this carriage, we were trying to cause a distraction so that we could get easy access and just bolt. I was meant to make sure that the guard in the area was not going to run over to the barracks and alert the entire town once something went awry. Unfortunately, I ended up missing my attack against him to trip him by shooting him in the knee. He ended up calling for help, and I didn't really know what to do. I had to deal with something, and in the heat of the moment, when I realized this is our only way of getting out, we were fully disguised. The town had no real reason to suggest that it was us, although we were just a group of outsiders that they were wary of, so we might have been suspects as it stood. We ended up taking as much time as we could to get that carriage out there with the distraction, that we attempted to create. It was a process. I ended up, burning that guy, burning hands, used that, casted him on him, and he died. He died a horrible death, and I felt so bad as just somebody trying to get out of town with a carriage and not have to walk down this deep, dark, horrible passageway that's definitely filled with bullshit. It's a whole thing. Ori's been through a lot, and I'm sure you, as experienced D&D players, know what that's like, and have a couple of stories that are just so grating to tell in regards to you trying to navigate through some stupid instance, or some challenging instance, rather, not to insult people's content. Not to say that I'm trying to, but you understand what I'm going at. You're gonna get messed up, if it's a hard adventure, and quite frankly, if there's harsh conditions, I can't speak today. If there's harsh conditions ahead, and the rolls just aren't popping that night, you know what it's like. And those create some pretty interesting stories on their own. But anyways, I've talked enough about that, and I've given the rough estimate of Ori and his more interesting adventures, that's for damn sure. But yeah, that was episode 10 for tonight of the Quiet Palace podcast, and I hope you enjoyed it. Again, another free ball, so it's not perfect, and I'm sorry about that. Usually I have something scripted, something ready, but in this case, this is how things ended up being with time constraints and what have you. So I hope that this will suffice. A funny story about one of my favorite characters I've ever played. And there are definitely more, so I can get into that in the future. But yeah, in the meantime, I hope you're having a wonderful day, a wonderful existence as it stands. And this has been Fett for Season 1 of the Quiet Palace podcast. I'll be coming back more with soon. I think I'm going to be gone for about a month just to be safe. In the near future, I will return. And we will be coming back with a couple different ideas I'm going to throw at you and see what you all think about that. Go from there. I'm in that experimental phase, The Season 1 was a proof of theory to me. It was just to see, how I can go about this at regular terms, what I have available to me, what the mortal I work with has available to him, etc. So, this is just something I'm trying to have fun with, and I hope that everyone has been enjoying it so far, and I hope it only gets better as time goes on, because as time goes on, I'll probably get better at editing software, etc., etc. So, yeah, there'll be things to look forward to. But in the meantime, I hope you have a good one. Thank you for tuning in, and take care.